Patrick Mahomes didn't just make a joke. He dropped a sentence at the worst possible time, in the loudest possible week, with the entire sports world already staring at Travis Kelce. Just hours before Kelce's wedding weekend with Taylor Swift became the most watched celebrity NFL spectacle in America, Mahomes sat down for a GQ profile and gave an answer nobody expected. The question sounded harmless. Which teammate would he want to take on vacation? For almost anyone following the Kansas City Chiefs, the answer felt obvious. Travis Kelce, his closest weapon, his championship brother, the man who helped build a dynasty with him. But Mahomes didn't say Travis. Instead, he pointed toward the future. He picked Xavier Worthy, the young speedster with fresh energy, blazing legs, and a growing connection with the quarterback. Then came the line that turned a playful answer into a headline. Kelce was getting too old. And that changed everything. Because this wasn't a random off-season interview. This wasn't a quiet March quote buried in a football magazine. This landed during the same week Madison Square Garden was being transformed into one of the most guarded buildings in New York City. Streets were closing. Black SUVs were sliding behind curtains. Swifties were crowding sidewalks. NFL stars, celebrities, owners, coaches, and media teams were all circling the biggest personal moment of Kelce's life. Travis Kelce was supposed to be walking into a fairy tale. Instead, his best friend in football became the headline. For years, Mahomes and Kelce have traded jokes. They have mocked each other, laughed at each other, and turned brotherly trash talk into part of their public identity. But this one felt different, not because the words were cruel, but because the timing was brutal. Kelce was 36. Retirement questions were already following him. A new contract had bought him more time in Kansas City. But every season now carried the same question. How much does he have left? Then Mahomes, the one person everyone expected to celebrate him, publicly chose the younger guy. So now the internet was asking a question nobody thought would define wedding week. Was this just a joke? Or was Patrick Mahomes quietly telling the world that the Chiefs' future was already moving on without Travis Kelce? If you're watching from Kansas City, New York, Nashville, Los Angeles, or anywhere in the world, comment where you're watching from right now. If you think Mahomes was only joking, press 1. If you think Kelce had every right to feel blindsided, press 2. And subscribe, because this story only gets more intense from here. To understand why Mahomes' comment hit so hard, you have to understand what Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are to each other. They are not just quarterback and tight end. They are not just two teammates who won some rings together. They became the emotional engine of the Kansas City Chiefs. Before Taylor Swift entered the picture, before red carpets and celebrity suites, before the wedding turned into a national event, Mahomes and Kelce were already one of the most dangerous partnerships the NFL had ever seen. Mahomes trusted Kelce in chaos. Kelce understood Mahomes when plays broke apart. When protection collapsed and defenders flooded the pocket, Kelce knew where to drift. Mahomes knew where to throw. It looked improvised, but it was really years of timing, pressure, and trust turned into instinct. That is why the vacation answer mattered. A random teammate could make an age joke and nobody would care. A rookie could say Kelce was old and the locker room would laugh. But when Mahomes said it, people heard something else. They heard the quarterback who has depended on Kelce for the biggest moments of his career suggesting that someone younger had taken the seat beside him. The family side made it even more complicated. Brittany Mahomes and Taylor Swift had become close almost immediately after Taylor's relationship with Kelce became public. They were seen together at Chiefs games, cheering from the suite, turning Kansas City Sundays into a mix of football, celebrity, and pop culture frenzy. Their friendship made the Mahomes-Kelce bond feel even bigger than football. It wasn't just Patrick and Travis anymore. Their lives had started overlapping. When Kelce proposed to Taylor, the Mahomes family was part of that emotional circle. Mahomes later joked that Taylor and Travis didn't even call him first. They called Brittany, and he was just in the background of the FaceTime. But even that detail showed how close the families had become. This wasn't a loose connection. This was personal. That is why the GQ answer felt so strange. Mahomes had been close enough to witness the biggest milestones. He had been close enough to know how important this wedding week was. He had been close enough to understand that Kelce was already carrying the pressure of age, fame, and expectation. Yet the quote still happened. And suddenly, in the middle of a week built around love, loyalty, and celebration, the most talked about football question became whether Mahomes had just downgraded his closest friend from irreplaceable brother to aging legend. Xavier Worthy didn't ask to become the symbol of this entire situation. But the moment Mahomes said his name, the young receiver was pulled directly into the spotlight. Worthy represents everything. Kelce is not anymore. He is young, he is fast, he is still being shaped. He carries the promise of what comes next instead of the weight of everything that has already happened. For a quarterback like Mahomes, that matters. The NFL is a league that never stops replacing yesterday's heroes with tomorrow's weapons. And Mahomes knows better than anyone that speed changes the way defenses breathe. When he talked about Worthy, Mahomes didn't just mention talent. He talked about energy. He talked about speed. He even brought up how his own kids enjoyed watching Worthy because of how fast he looked on the field. That detail sounded innocent, but it made the comparison sharper. Kelce was the old favorite. Worthy was the exciting new presence. That is where fans started to split. Some people saw the whole thing as classic Mahomes. A harmless joke. A little brotherly needle before the wedding. The kind of comment that Kelce himself might laugh about later. After all, Kelce has never been shy about roasting Mahomes. He has joked about Mahomes' voice, his style, his personality, and their locker room dynamic has always included playful shots. But others heard a deeper message. They heard a quarterback acknowledging that the Chiefs' offense is changing. They heard the first public hint that Kelce's place in Mahomes' daily world may not be what it used to be. And in sports, perception often becomes its own kind of truth. Once fans believe there is a shift, every small detail becomes evidence. If Kelce looked quiet, people would say the comment bothered him. If Mahomes smiled too much near Worthy, people would say the replacement had begun. If Taylor seemed distant from Brittany for even one camera angle, people would invent a deeper freeze behind the scenes. That is the danger of one sentence during a week this big. Mahomes may have meant nothing serious. He may have been laughing when he said it, but when a superstar quarterback talks about his aging Hall of Fame tight end and then names a younger player as his new preferred travel companion, the internet doesn't treat that like a joke. It treats it like a clue. And by the time the wedding weekend fully began, Xavier Worthy had become more than a receiver. He had become the face of the future, standing next to the shadow of a legend. While fans were arguing online, New York City was preparing for something that looked less like a wedding and more like a global security operation. Madison Square Garden was at the center of it all. The building that had hosted championship games, legendary concerts, and historic nights was suddenly wrapped in speculation. Permits had been filed, streets were blocked. Crews moved around the arena like they were building a secret world behind closed doors. Every black SUV created a new rumor. Every covered entrance made people lean closer. Every delivery truck became part of the mystery. For Taylor Swift, this kind of attention was nothing new. Her life had been surrounded by cameras for years. But for Travis Kelce, this was a different level. He was used to Arrowhead noise, playoff pressure, and defenders trying to knock him off routes. He was not used to his wedding being treated like a national broadcast event before it even happened. That is why Mahomes' comment became so disruptive. Kelce already had enough attention on him. He had the NFL watching, he had Swifties watching, he had entertainment media watching, he had Chiefs fans watching, former teammates, coaches, executives, celebrities, and family members were all tied to the same weekend. The story was supposed to be simple. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift stepping into the next chapter of their lives. Instead, a football subplot slipped into the middle of the fairy tale. Was Kelce still Mahomes' guy? Was Worthy now the new favorite? Was the Chiefs dynasty quietly shifting under everyone's feet? Was the age joke just bad timing? Or did it reveal what Kansas City had been preparing for privately? Even Andy Reid had been drawn into the wedding conversation before the event, joking about whether his tuxedo would still fit. The Chiefs organization seemed wrapped in warmth, humor, and celebration. Coaches and owners were expected to show support. The franchise treated the wedding like a family event because Kelce had given Kansas City his entire career. That made Mahomes' answer stand out even more. Everyone else seemed to be showing up with praise. Mahomes showed up with a punchline, and even if that punchline was meant with love, it arrived like a spark near dry wood. By Friday, the wedding itself was too massive to ignore, but the comment never fully disappeared. It followed Kelce into the weekend like a whisper behind the music. A reminder that in the NFL, even personal joy can be interrupted by questions about age, loyalty, and what comes next. The wedding guest list only made the story bigger. This was not a small private ceremony hidden away from the world. This was the kind of event where every arrival created a headline. NFL names, entertainment figures, old friends, business partners, and powerful families all moved through New York under a level of attention that made the entire city feel like part of the stage. Taylor Swift's world and Travis Kelce's world had fully collided. From the music side came the glamour, the cameras, the fashion, the speculation about songs, speeches, and secret meanings. From the football side came the coaches, teammates, and Chiefs royalty, who had watched Kelce grow from young star into franchise icon. The Hunt family's presence mattered because it signaled that this was not just a celebrity wedding. For Kansas City, this was one of their own being honored. But underneath the elegance, Mahomes' comment kept giving people something to talk about. Imagine being Kelce in that moment. You are walking into a weekend designed around commitment. Your entire personal life is becoming official in front of the most famous people you know. You are trying to stay present, calm, grateful, and focused. Then your phone, your friends, your social feeds, and maybe even the people around you are all reacting to a quote from your quarterback saying you are too old to be the easy vacation pick. It is not the kind of thing that ruins a wedding, but it is the kind of thing that gets under the skin, because Kelce has always balanced two identities. On one side, he is the loud, funny, confident tight end who can laugh at himself. On the other side, he is a competitor who has spent his life proving that age, doubt, and criticism will not define him. When Mahomes joked about him being too old, it touched both sides at once. The entertainer could laugh. The competitor might not forget. That tension is what made the situation so interesting. Nobody expected Kelce to explode publicly. That is not how this kind of brotherhood works. He and Mahomes have too much history, too much respect, too many rings, and too many shared battles to turn one interview into open conflict. But silence does not always mean nothing happened. Sometimes silence means a person is choosing the moment carefully. And for Kelce, the moment was impossible. He could respond before the wedding and create a bigger distraction. Or he could ignore it, walk into the ceremony, and let people wonder what he really thought. He chose the second path, but the question stayed alive. The most uncomfortable part of the entire situation is that Mahomes may have been saying out loud what the Chiefs already know privately. Football does not wait for feelings. It does not slow down because a player is loved. It does not protect a legend from time just because he helped build a dynasty. Every franchise eventually faces the same painful truth. The players who made the past unforgettable cannot always be the players who carry the future. Travis Kelce is still valuable. Nobody serious would deny that. His intelligence, chemistry with Mahomes, playoff experience, and ability to read defenses are rare. He does not need to be the fastest player on the field to control a game. He has won for years by understanding space before defenders even realize it exists. But the NFL is built on younger legs. That is where Xavier Worthy changes the conversation. Worthy gives Mahomes a different kind of weapon. He stretches the field. He forces defenders to turn their hips. He creates fear before the ball is even snapped. A player like that does not replace Kelce's mind, but he changes the offense's rhythm. He gives Mahomes something fresh to build around. So when Mahomes picked Worthy in that interview, fans were not just reacting to a vacation answer, they were reacting to a possible preview of Kansas City's next identity. For a decade, the Chiefs' emotional center was Mahomes to Kelce. Third down, red zone, broken play, playoff panic, Super Bowl pressure, find 87. That formula became so familiar that people forgot it could ever change. But dynasties survive by evolving before decline becomes obvious. Maybe Mahomes knows that. Maybe the joke worked because part of it was true. That does not mean he loves Kelce less. It does not mean the friendship is fake. It does not mean the dynasty is broken. But it might mean Mahomes is already learning to live in two timelines. One timeline honors Kelce as the brother who helped him become a legend. The other timeline prepares for a Chiefs offense where Worthy and the younger core take on a bigger role. That is a difficult balance. And Kelce, smart as he is, probably understands it better than anyone. Still, understanding something does not make it painless. Especially when the reminder comes publicly during your wedding week from the quarterback whose trust has defined your career. Taylor Swift's presence made every layer of the story louder. If this had been a normal NFL wedding, Mahomes' comment might have lasted one afternoon on sports radio. Fans would argue, laugh, and move on. But because Taylor was involved, the audience multiplied overnight. Suddenly, the story was not just about Chiefs chemistry. It was about friendship circles, celebrity loyalty, public embarrassment, and whether a groom had been disrespected before the biggest day of his life. Swifties looked at it differently than football fans. Football fans understand locker room humor. They know teammates take shots at each other all the time. They know age jokes are common, especially when a veteran has been around as long as Kelce. But Swift's audience often reads public moments through relationship dynamic. Timing matters, tone matters, public support matters. To them, a close friend making that comment right before the wedding did not look like harmless football banter. It looked careless. That created a strange collision of cultures. Chiefs fans were saying, relax. This is just how Mahomes and Kelce talk. Swift fans were asking, why would he say that now? Entertainment outlets leaned into the emotional angle. Sports outlets leaned into the football angle. Social media mixed both together until the story became bigger than the quote itself. And then there was Brittany Mahomes. Because Brittany's friendship with Taylor had become part of the public narrative, people immediately wondered how she fit into the tension. Did she laugh it off? Did she smooth things over privately? Did Taylor care? Did Travis tell Patrick the joke landed wrong? Nobody outside the circle could know for sure. But that did not stop the speculation. That is what fame does. It turns private silence into public evidence. A normal friend group can have an awkward joke and fix it over dinner. This friend group has millions of people analyzing facial expressions, seating arrangements, Instagram likes, and who stood next to whom. Every small move becomes part of the story. For Mahomes, that may have been the biggest miscalculation. He is used to football attention. He knows how to handle reporters asking about playoff losses, injuries, contracts, and rival quarterbacks. But Taylor Swift's world brings a different kind of spotlight. In that world, a single sentence can be dissected like a lyric, and this sentence had everything the internet loves: friendship, fame, age, replacement, and a wedding. As the wedding weekend unfolded, Kelce's silence became almost as powerful as Mahomes' original comment. He did not rush to correct the story. He did not post a joke immediately. He did not turn it into a public back and forth before the ceremony. That restraint mattered. It showed that Kelce understood the stakes. This was not the week to feed the noise. This was the week to protect the moment. But silence can be read in two ways. To some fans, it proved nothing was wrong. Kelce was focused on Taylor, family, and the ceremony. Why would he waste emotional energy responding to a joke when he was stepping into one of the biggest days of his life? To others, the silence felt heavier. Maybe he did not respond because the comment actually bothered him. Maybe he chose not to give Mahomes the satisfaction of a public reaction. Maybe he wanted to keep the peace until the cameras were gone. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Kelce is not fragile. He has survived harder criticism than this. He has heard questions about his age, his focus, his celebrity relationship, his production, his retirement timeline, and whether fame has changed him. A joke from Mahomes would not break him, but it could sting. Not because Mahomes picked Worthy. That part could be funny. Not even because of the too old line. Kelce has joked about age himself. What made it sting was the setting. When a man is about to marry the most famous woman in the world, every public word around him becomes part of the memory. Mahomes' comment did not stay in a locker room. It became part of the wedding week archive. That is why fans could not let it go. They were not just asking whether Kelce was offended. They were asking whether this was the first visible crack in a friendship that had always looked unshakable. Mahomes and Kelce built their image on trust. The idea that Mahomes might now prefer the younger guy, even as a joke, created a symbolic shift, and symbols matter in sports. A quarterback's favorite target is not always the player with the best stats. Sometimes it is the player he trusts when everything breaks down. For years, that was Kelce. If Worthy is now becoming the exciting name in Mahomes' orbit, then fans are watching the beginning of a transition they may not be ready for. Kelce's silence kept the peace, but it also let the mystery breathe. By the end of the weekend, the real story was no longer just whether Patrick Mahomes had insulted Travis Kelce. The real story was how one offhand answer revealed the pressure surrounding the entire Chiefs dynasty. Kansas City is living in a rare place. They are still great enough to chase championships, but old enough to feel time pushing from behind. Mahomes is still the center of the NFL universe. Andy Reid is still the steady architect. Kelce is still one of the smartest offensive players of his generation. But the future is not waiting politely outside the door. It is already inside the building, wearing a jersey, running deep routes, and making Mahomes smile when he talks about speed. That is what Xavier Worthy represents. He is not just a young receiver. He is the reminder that even the strongest football relationships eventually change shape. Kelce can still matter deeply to Mahomes, and still no longer be the automatic answer to every question. He can still be loved inside the Chiefs building and still feel the younger generation gaining ground. Both things can be true, and that is what makes this situation more emotional than a simple joke. The wedding setting only made it sharper. A wedding is about commitment. Football is about replacement. One world says forever, the other says next man up. Kelce stood in the middle of both. On one side, he was stepping into a new life with Taylor Swift, surrounded by fame, family, and celebration. On the other side, his quarterback had just reminded everyone that age is part of the conversation now. Maybe Mahomes meant it as nothing more than friendly teasing. Maybe Kelce laughed about it later. Maybe Taylor and Brittany rolled their eyes and moved on. But the public heard something bigger, because the public always does. They heard a dynasty facing its next chapter. They heard a friendship being tested by timing. They heard the future calling before the past was ready to leave. And that is why this story refuses to disappear. Because deep down, fans know the Mahomes-Kelce era cannot last forever. Every great duo eventually reaches the moment where memories and reality begin to separate. The question is not whether Mahomes and Kelce are still brothers. The question is whether the Chiefs can honor that brotherhood while building the next version of themselves. And after one unexpected GQ answer, that question is now louder than ever. In the end, Patrick Mahomes' comment was never just about a vacation answer. It became a mirror for everything the Chiefs are facing now. Loyalty, aging, fame, transition, and the impossible challenge of staying great while the world watches every move. Strategically, Kansas City knows the next chapter cannot look exactly like the last one. The Mahomes-Kelce connection will always be one of the greatest partnerships in modern football, but no dynasty survives by living only on memories. The Chiefs have to develop younger weapons. They have to stretch the field. They have to give Mahomes new answers when defenses take away the old ones. Xavier Worthy is not an insult to Kelce's legacy. He is part of the franchise's survival plan. But emotionally, this is where things get complicated. Because Travis Kelce is not just another veteran aging out of the spotlight. He is the heartbeat of a championship era. He gave Kansas City toughness, personality, leadership, and unforgettable moments when the pressure was at its highest. He became more than a tight end. He became part of the city's identity. So when Mahomes casually jokes that Kelce is too old, even if it is playful, fans feel the weight behind it. They are not just hearing a joke. They are hearing the first notes of goodbye. And maybe that is the lesson here. Great friendships can survive awkward moments, but timing matters. Words matter. Public jokes land differently when someone is already under pressure. Mahomes may not have meant any harm, but the reaction proves that even champions have to be careful when private brotherhood becomes public entertainment. For Kelce, the wisest move may be exactly what he did. Protect his peace, focus on his family, and let the noise pass. For Mahomes, the lesson is just as clear. Honor the past while building the future, because leadership is not only about throwing touchdowns, it is also about knowing when a teammate needs support more than a punchline. And for the fans, maybe the message is simple. Celebrate the era while it is still here. Don't turn every joke into a war. Don't turn every transition into betrayal. Football changes fast, but respect should remain. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce have already given the NFL history. Xavier Worthy may help write the next chapter, and Taylor Swift's presence has only made this story bigger, brighter, and more complicated than anyone expected. So the real question is not whether Mahomes and Kelce are finished. The real question is whether Kansas City can evolve without losing the brotherhood that made them special in the first place. If you believe Mahomes and Kelce are still locked in as brothers, comment 1. If you think the Chiefs are already moving into the Xavier Worthy era, comment 2. And if you want more NFL stories like this, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video with another football fan who knows that behind every dynasty, there is always drama, loyalty, and one impossible decision waiting around the corner.